Matixis Kuchi Haima. My name is Marge Grow Eppard. I go by Sister Who Walks with Bears. I apologize for not being on sooner, but we had a court date last Friday, September 19th in Modesto about Darren Lee, who is one of the 4 animals who murdered Philip and Kathy Ranzo in their home. So I'm going to read a little bit about some of the newspaper clippings in the Modesto Bee that was brought up on them to bring the community updated on what's going on with the court trials. So it says Darren Lee, age 57 of Modesto, was found unsuitable for parole at a June 19, 2020 hearing of the State Board of Parole Hearings held by video conference at San Quentin Prison. Special Prosecutor Amy Elliott Newman appeared at the hearing and argued for continued confinement based on Lee's lack of programming and self-help, lack of insight into his crimes, and his unsuitability for parole. The Board of Parole Hearings agreed and denied parole for 3 years. This is in 2020. On June 25th, 1979, this is when it occurred, Darren Lee, age 16 at the time, and his 3 crime partners brutally murdered Philip and Catherine Ranzo in their home. Darren Lee and his crime partners planned a home invasion robbery which began with knocking on the door of the Ranzo home and pretending to be out of gas and asking to use the telephone. Since their telephone was out of order, Philip Ranzo offered to give them a can of gas. Darren Lee, and his crime partners followed Mr. Ranzo into the garage. This is hard. Where Darren Lee then held Mr. Ranzo at gunpoint. Darren Lee and his crime partners hogtied Philip Ranzo on the floor of his garage. Once tied up, Mr. Ranzo was beaten over the head with a baseball bat. Darren Lee then entered the Ranzo home, where Catherine Ranzo was watching TV in the living room. Mrs. Ranzo was ordered at gunpoint to go upstairs. Lee's crime partners took Mrs. Ranzo to an upstairs bedroom and proceeded to rape and murder her. Mrs. Ranzo was struck in the head multiple times with an axe, tortured with cuts to her eyes and face, and suffered a fatal stab wound to the throat. Darren Lee and his crime partners ransacked the Ranzo home, stealing cash and jewelry. Before leaving the home, one of Darren Lee's crime partners went back into the garage and stabbed Mr. Ranzo multiple times in the face and neck, inflicting fatal injuries. The Ranzo's brutal murders orphaned their only child, Mark. 10-year-old Mark was not home the night of the murders, having spent the night at his grandparents' house. So on that day that Mark was home, his cousins, Michelle and Michael, were over there because the grandparents, my godparents, lived around the corner from Philip and Kathy, and they had decided to spend the night at Sam and Marie's, and then the next night at Philip and Kathy's. That's how these children were spared their life, because one of them admitted when asked if those 3 children had been in the home at the time, their remark was they would have been killed too. So on to this newspaper article. 23 hours before the Ranzo murders, Darren Lee and 2 of his 3 Ranzo crime partners robbed and assaulted a caretaker of a home in Newman. Lee selected the home and planned the crime. Lee and his crime partners told the caretaker, Leonard Luna, that they had run out of gas. Once inside the house, they hogtied Mr. Luna and beat him in the head with a revolver, which cut his scalp. They then proceeded to ransack the home, stealing multiple guns and weapons, which Darren Lee and his crime partners used while at the Ranzo home. Attorney Amy Elliott Newman argued to the board that continued confinement was necessary to keep the public safe. Speaking for the victim's family, retired Deputy District Attorney Beth DeJong read a statement from Philip Ranzo's sister, Sandy Howell, and a statement from Leonard Luna. In Ms. Howell's statement, she expressed fear over Lee's potential release and believes that she and her family are in danger if Lee is ever released. Ms. DeJong asked the board to deny parole. Mark Ranzo also attended the hearing to ensure that Lee was not released on parole. Darren Lee was convicted of 2 counts of murder in the first degree and 1 count of robbery while armed with a firearm. The case was moved to Sacramento County in 1980 based on a change of venue motion. Originally, Darren Lee was sentenced to life without parole. His sentence was later reduced by an appellate court which deemed the sentence cruel and unusual punishment for a minor. Lee is currently serving 2 consecutive sentences of 25 years to life. He has served 40 years in prison. How ironic that they deemed it cruel and unusual punishment for a minor to be in prison for all these crimes and leaving my nephew Mark, 10 years old, without parents. But they don't think of Mark, as I will inform you in a little while what has been going on all these years since 1979. In 2015, Darren Lee was found unsuitable for parole and given a 5-year denial. He will be scheduled for his next hearing in 2023. However, pursuant to SB 260, and remember that, State Bill 260, because I'm going to war on this to change it. Youthful offender legislation. Darren Lee was advised at the end of this hearing that he has the right to advance his hearing if he believes he has made progress towards release, which he has not. In addition to seeking parole and in response to a 2019 change to California's felony murder law, Darren Lee filed a petition to be resentenced and have his murder conviction vacated. Darren Lee contends in part that because he was not the actual killer of the Ranzos, he is entitled to resentencing on the robbery and burglary convictions alone. The Stanislaus County District Attorney vigorously opposes his petition on the basis that he was a major participant in the murders of the Ranzos. The petition will be heard in Sacramento County Superior Court, where the original trial took place. So as I stated, there was 4 of them. The first one was just paroled in January of this year, 3 years parole. We got notification his parole is ended. That wasn't 3 years. In a matter of months, you cannot serve 3 years of parole and then all of a sudden you are now no longer on parole. He was paroled in Sacramento, you guys. He is walking around free in your area. He found an older woman, a real estate agent, that married him. She has a huge house. She has money. She went to live with him. So this is what I'm trying to stress with you women that get with these guys that are in prison. They're using you so they have a place to go and petition to be out early. This was a savage murder that they did, and they almost killed this other man. But wait, there's more. Darren Lee has a mother who, Kathy, owned her own business, the hair refinery in Modesto. It was doing so good that she had decided to purchase another building and have a second hair refinery. She had asked Darren Lee's mom if she wanted to partner with her. Darren Lee's mom bragged to Darren Lee that Kathy had a lot of money in the home and they would be going into business together. So Darren Lee is the mastermind of all of this. I will give you more insight as to the other three that are involved, but right now my main question is, why isn't that mom in prison also? Because she was the one that instigated it, gave them the address, when they would be home. Philip was a very well-known pharmacist at Modesto City Pharmacy for the hospitals. He saved a lot of lives because he was the one that filled these prescriptions. So he was very well known also. These were very liked, a very liked couple, very loved, very respected, and had a beautiful son, Mark, 10 years old. So like I said, this happened in 1979, and we just came back from court against Darren Lee Friday, where they gave us 120 days to come back to court to plead the case that this guy cannot be released from prison. Because if he is, he just might be released to Modesto. He's probably already been in contact with the first one, Jeff Maria, that was released in Sacramento. The fear is, what should be going through everybody's mind, is when they get together, they are going to band and go after people that they feel is their fault for them being incarcerated all this time, instead of taking ownership of what they did. Not one dime has been given to Mark Ranzo, not one, in restitution from all four of them. They've gotten money from family, from women who feel so sorry for them that they send them money for their books so they can get things. Meanwhile, Mark is broken because of this. They have more rights than the Ranzo victims. Victims services, I talked to Friday. Mark, and I'm going to get emotional because I want you guys to listen to me. Mark was 10 years old when his parents were murdered brutally. Didn't have GoFundMe back then. 2 caskets, 2 burials, everything was double that had to be paid for. They took that money out of his trust fund. He paid for his own parents' burial services, funeral services, the upkeep still every year at that cemetery. A 10-year-old has to take money out to bury his parents. Wrong. I am ready to throw down, people. The injustice that is happening in the Ranzo family is more than I can frickin' comprehend. So now this Darren Lee, we have 120 days to make a case and plead the parole board. We want 5 more years. He says he needs medical help. He's not getting it in prison. When his surgeon was on this call, and he has everything he needs. Everything. He just wants out. He wants freedom so he can do some damage to the ones who opposed him. His narcissism is out of control. If you could see him, he's so smug and everything is against him. Well, it's a lot harder out here than it is where you are. And he has somebody protecting him on the inside. He's joined. Some say it's white supremacists. Some say it's Aryan Brotherhood. We're hearing a lot of things. Now, when Sandy was interviewed, that's the sister of Philip, She was interviewed on a few radio stations, and the calls that came in were deploring. They were blaming her. How could you do this to these 4 young men? You're gonna ruin their lives. You're a bitch. You're this, you're that. More or less telling her she's gonna go to hell. Instead of the support of a community saying, how can we help you? Do you need letters to the governor? How do we change this? Can we bring you food? Can we help you with this? She got hate. I hope you, if you're still alive and you were part of this, I don't know how you live with yourself. I really don't. How you put her on display to tear her to pieces again when she was just fighting to keep these monsters behind bars and keep everybody safe. Also, threats. When they would go to court, when they would stand outside the state capitol, when they would have their posters that one of them was coming up for parole again. Sandy's kids, grandkids, Philip has grandchildren from Mark. Mark has some beautiful daughters, are in fear of their lives. In fear of their lives still. They're the victims. I don't get it. I don't get our society that it's okay to let these guys out and not pay $1 restitution to the family. So I'm able to finally come in and try and help, because I am part of All Indigenous Missing and Murdered Women in Two-Spirit, California. MMIM, Missing and Murdered Men. MMIR, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives. It goes on and on. So I'm using my platform to help my family. Philip and Kathy's name has been on my red MMIW teepee for years. They were one of the first names to go up. To help this family, we need letters to Gavin Newsom. That's another thing. I had asked for a sit down for the family in front of Gavin Newsom. It came through a letter. Friday morning they read it because he had given them the release. They were eligible for parole. I wanted to know how he could do that. You need to answer some questions. Well, thankfully the last board of parole heard some discrepancies in what Darren Lee was saying. He was still using drugs. He was still acting up. He, pretty much prancing around that he was untouchable, and the parole board heard it and said, you are not ready for parole. So at this one, he tried to sound like he was a changed man all of a sudden, but he did admit that people had been telling him what to say so that he could say it to the parole board, and they would say, oh, he's different, we should parole him. Thankfully, that old parole board that had questions sent it to Governor Newsom. Governor Newsom. He read it and he pretty much thanked them for watching his back. So that's the news that we got Friday. It had been rescinded. He was not being released on parole. Now we have 120 days, and I'm getting aggressive. I'm getting letters. I am starting posters, banners, whatever it takes. In the courtroom, I wore the t-shirt that my grandson made. A picture of Philip and Kathy and Mark. At Philip's graduation from UOP, I was there. I was there for that celebration. And God, what a happy time. And now I have to wear that t-shirt to bring attention to the parole board of they were a happy family. And it was taken from them. So, with the permission of Sandy and Mark, I'm going to start selling these t-shirts and giving that money. All proceeds will go to Mark to help him. Like I said, Victim Services hasn't been able to help. They haven't paid restitution. Now that's 4 individuals that haven't paid restitution since Mark was 10. This happened in 1979. We're now at 2025. I was pregnant during that time with my oldest daughter, Shawnee, when this happened, and my doctor pretty much said I could not go to any of the court hearings because I would lose my baby. So I didn't get to be a part of that. And then I got into depression and other things, but this isn't about me. But here I am now, and I'm fighting for Sandy and Mark and the family to keep these 4 in. I'm hoping that one that got released on parole messes up and he ends up back in there. That's my prayers. Get him off the street. He didn't pay enough. Mark even stated that when his parents could walk out of a courtroom, then he could see that these 4 could walk out of a courtroom. Until then, no, do not give them parole. So I'm just giving you an update on what's going on, and I'll be doing more podcasts on this to make you aware, because there's a lot of individuals being paroled that shouldn't be, and I don't know if they have the support that they need to keep those murderers behind bars. But I'm actually learning a lot about law, rescission. That's what they said Friday, that it has been rescinded and we would go back to the drawing table in 120 days. Before that, it was an en banc hearing, and the board listened, thankfully, heartfelt what was being said. We just need community to know what's going on and to get involved also, that they should not be released. Like I said, I'm going in aggressive, and this is going to take up a lot of my time as I'm learning this and gathering all this information. And I'm going to be interviewing as many people as I can that are still alive that were around that area in 1979, because people were in fear. They hadn't caught them that day. And so, back then we didn't have to lock our doors, but until those guys were caught, we were in fear that at any time they could bust in our doors and do the same thing that they did to Philip and Kathy. And I'm going to tell you guys the truth, that they wouldn't have stopped. They were on a killing spree, and it would have been a lot worse had it not been for the Modesto Police Department and the detectives that come swooping in. And I thank them. I don't know if any of them are still alive, but if their family hears this, thank you. I appreciate that. But our work is not over. And so I'm going to end that at this. And I just wanted to say that Cliff Matthias of Red Drum Motorcycle Club, I have these bandanas. I'm sending you 100 of them. And the Medicine Wheel Riders, I will be mailing you 100 that you can pass out to. I know you guys go to a lot of places and see a lot of people. And, I'm more than happy that if you could bless others with this. It says AIMM, AIMM. That stands for All Indigenous Missing and Murdered with a Hand. And it says in big, bold letters, I am. I am safe. I am wanted. I am important. I am unique. I am loved. And in the other corner, 2025. And we'll be going into production for 2026 pretty soon. But for right now, those are the next 2 groups that are going to be getting some of these bandanas. I just delivered 150 to Chief Arvil Looking Horse when he was here in San Jose Saturday. I've owed him bandanas for quite a few years, so it felt good to be able to bless him with that to take home to South Dakota. So I'll be getting these in the mail in the next couple of days for you guys, and then we'll go to another production of, because there's quite a few groups that have been requesting 100 of these to pass out at their events, and we're going to try our best. And then I'll be starting to get with my sister Lisa McQuaid Diaz on May 5th, doing another motorcycle run for MMIW and MMIR and Two-Spirit Awareness. So I thank you for listening to this and for supporting me. I'm going to need as much help as I can get. The support is very much needed. Thank you.